Paul Young, No Parlez. An LP I found in the Salvation Army charity shop in Wycombe for £2. It is an album I used to have on cassette when it first came out in 1983. It is one of those albums I once played to death and then never want to hear again ever in my whole life. I bought this LP because it was, for good or bad, a landmark in musical production. And it is an interesting artefact from my musical past. I originally bought it because I'd heard numerous tracks on the radio, including the first hit single, a cover of Marvin Gaye's Wherever I Lay My Hat, with Pino Palladino's sliding bass, that was novel at the time. I was already familiar with Paul Young. I had seen his first band playing in the King's Head on Harrow Hill. They later had a hit with the song Toast, which was revived after Paul Young became famous. It was very much his laughing gnome. But I was mostly familiar with his band the Q-Tips, who were like a soul review band. I missed Q-Tips when they also played some early gigs in Harrow, but I did catch them at the Venue in Victoria after they had become quite well known. I also had the Q-Tips album on cassette. The album No Parlez was talked up at the time as a triumph of modern production. I was doing a lot of recording and I thought I needed to examine it in detail just to keep up. It was the beginning of the age of digital sound. Everything had a glossy sheen. People in the 80s used to listen to production as much as performance or songs. Even people not involved with recording would appreciate the Duran Duran orchestral strikes and the crazy non-musical effects like the noise that suddenly appears in Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes, turning it from an average song by an unfashionable band into the primary example of the state of the art of noise. The No Parlez album had a cover of Love of the Common People that was quite fun. It also featured a couple of backing singers who were being used a lot at the time. They called themselves the Fabulous Wealthy Tarts. Laurie Latham, the producer, used these backing singers to great effect, but not just to back up the choruses, but also to add vocal sounds that punctuated the sung lines, with random syllables, sexual squeals, moans and groans, and touches of scat and African chanting. Sometimes the bass isn't slidey, but is funky and slappy. The drums sound massive, with tons of reverb that sometimes abruptly and unnaturally disappears. And that was another sound of the times. Staccato noises appear in one speaker and then out of the other. There are stringy pads, and worst of all, there is a digital synth xylophone sound that mercifully quickly went out of fashion. There is also a cover of Love Will Tear Us Apart Again, which purists thought was sacrilege, but I saw it more as a tribute. I also much prefer the Joy Division original, but Paul Young drew attention to it. There were some original songs written by Paul Young, along with his musical partner who had been with him in the Q-Tips. 3 of the songs were written by the songwriter Jack Lee, who also wrote Hanging on the Telephone, which was covered by Blondie. The best known Jack Lee song on this album is Come Back and Stay. But the problem is that the thing that sounded new became the sound of the times, and there was to be years and years and years of that kind of thing. So much so that not only did I never listen to it again, but as the 80s wore on I stopped listening to popular music altogether. Those were my opera years that were only brought to an end by Britpop.